What if the cheap shirt hanging in your closet carried a hidden story of pollution, exploitation, and environmental damage that most people never stop to imagine? Fast fashion looks exciting, trendy, and affordable on the surface, but behind the colorful store displays lies a global system with consequences many shoppers rarely see. Every year, billions of clothing items are produced quickly, sold cheaply, worn briefly, and then discarded, creating one of the most wasteful industries on the planet. The fashion industry moves at lightning speed, constantly pushing new trends that convince people their perfectly good clothes are suddenly outdated or unfashionable. This endless cycle of buying and replacing clothes fuels the fast fashion machine, encouraging massive production while hiding the real environmental and human costs. Many brands release new collections every few weeks, turning fashion into a non-stop race where companies compete to produce clothes faster and cheaper than ever before. To keep prices extremely low, manufacturers cut corners in materials, labor conditions, and environmental protection, creating serious problems far away from the shopping malls. Behind every low-priced garment is a complex global supply chain stretching across factories, farms, shipping routes, and warehouses spanning multiple continents. The cotton used in many clothes often requires enormous amounts of water, pesticides, and land, placing heavy pressure on fragile ecosystems around the world. Producing a single cotton t-shirt can require thousands of liters of water, enough for one person to drink for years. But water consumption is only one part of the story, because textile production also releases toxic chemicals into rivers and soil near factories. These chemicals can harm wildlife, contaminate drinking water, and damage the health of communities living near textile manufacturing zones. In some regions, rivers that once supported farming and fishing have turned unnatural colors due to dyes used in large-scale clothing production. The rapid growth of fast fashion means factories must work around the clock, pushing workers to produce huge quantities of garments in extremely tight deadlines. Many workers in developing countries earn very low wages, despite working long hours under difficult and sometimes unsafe conditions. For countless garment workers, sewing clothes for global brands becomes a daily struggle just to earn enough money for food, housing, and basic necessities. The pressure to produce quickly often means safety measures are ignored, putting workers at serious risk in crowded and poorly maintained factories. Several tragic factory accidents over the years have revealed the dangerous conditions that can exist behind the glamorous world of fashion advertising. These events force the world to briefly pay attention to garment workers, though many problems still remain today. While consumers enjoy cheap clothing and constant new trends, the workers producing those clothes often remain invisible in the global fashion conversation. Another hidden problem comes after clothes are purchased and eventually thrown away by consumers who quickly move on to the next trend. Many discarded garments end up in landfills, where synthetic fabrics can take decades or even centuries to fully break down. During this long decomposition process, materials release harmful substances and microplastics into soil and water systems. These tiny plastic particles eventually travel through ecosystems and can even return to humans through food and drinking water. The fashion industry is now responsible for a surprisingly large share of global carbon emissions due to energy-intensive production and worldwide shipping networks. Factories require massive electricity and fuel to produce fabrics, run machinery, dye textiles, and transport finished garments across continents. When millions of clothing items are shipped by trucks, cargo ships, and airplanes, the environmental impact grows even larger. Yet the fast fashion business model depends on speed and volume, making it difficult for companies to slow production or reduce environmental damage. Social media also plays a powerful role by constantly promoting new styles and encouraging people to refresh their wardrobes more frequently. Influencers showcase endless outfits online, creating the impression that repeating clothes is unfashionable or boring. As a result, many people purchase garments they might only wear a few times before replacing them with newer styles. This behavior keeps demand high and encourages brands to produce clothing at an even faster pace. But the faster clothing is produced, the lower its quality often becomes, leading to garments that wear out quickly. When clothes fall apart sooner, consumers return to stores again, unknowingly continuing the cycle of fast fashion consumption. Cheap materials and rushed manufacturing make it difficult to repair or recycle garments effectively. Imagine standing beside a river that once flowed clear and alive, now carrying strange colors from textile dyes, silently revealing the environmental price of fast fashion. The production of clothing requires an enormous amount of natural resources, especially water, energy, and chemicals, all consumed at astonishing speed to satisfy global fashion demand. Cotton, one of the most widely used fibers in clothing, demands vast farmland and extraordinary water consumption to grow in the quantities required by fashion brands. In several farming regions, cotton cultivation has drained rivers and lakes, leaving communities struggling with water shortages and damaged agricultural ecosystems. Farmers often rely on powerful pesticides and fertilizers to increase cotton production, but these chemicals can harm soil health and nearby wildlife habitats. When heavy rains arrive, these chemicals wash into rivers and lakes, spreading pollution far beyond the original farms where cotton is grown. After harvesting, cotton fibers travel to textile factories where they are cleaned, spun, woven, and transformed into fabric ready for clothing production. This stage of manufacturing requires large machines that consume huge amounts of electricity, often generated by fossil fuels contributing to global carbon emissions. Once fabric is created, it enters one of the most environmentally damaging phases of fashion production, the dyeing and finishing process. To create bright colors and fashionable designs, manufacturers use thousands of chemical compounds that help fabrics absorb dyes and maintain vibrant shades. Unfortunately, many factories release untreated wastewater containing these chemicals directly into nearby rivers, lakes, or drainage systems. In regions with weak environmental regulations, polluted water flows freely into ecosystems that once supported fish, birds, and farming communities. Some rivers located near major textile hubs have become so contaminated that the water is unsafe for drinking, bathing, or irrigation. Local residents living near these factories sometimes experience serious health problems due to prolonged exposure to polluted water and air. Skin irritation, breathing difficulties, and other illnesses can appear in communities located close to large textile manufacturing centers. While global brands benefit from low production costs, these environmental and health burdens are often carried by vulnerable communities far away. Synthetic fabrics like polyester add another layer of environmental concern because they are made from petroleum, the same resource used to produce plastic. Polyester has become extremely popular because it is cheap, durable, and easy to produce in massive quantities for fast fashion collections. However, producing polyester requires energy-intensive chemical processes that contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. Even after the clothing is manufactured, synthetic fabrics continue affecting the environment each time they are washed. Tiny fibers called microplastics break off during washing and enter wastewater systems through household drains. Wastewater treatment plants cannot capture all of these microscopic fibers, allowing many of them to flow into rivers, lakes, and oceans. Scientists have discovered microplastics in marine animals, drinking water, and even the air people breathe in certain environments. Over time, these tiny plastic particles accumulate in ecosystems and food chains, creating long-term environmental concerns that scientists are still studying. The rapid turnover of clothing trends only increases this problem because people purchase synthetic garments more frequently than ever before. Many of these garments are worn only a few times before being discarded, especially when trends shift, or clothing begins to lose shape. The shorter the lifespan of clothing, the more resources must be used to produce replacements, increasing environmental pressure worldwide. Fashion companies often design garments with lower durability to reduce costs and encourage repeat purchases from customers seeking new styles. This strategy may boost profits, but it also creates massive amounts of textile waste accumulating across the planet. Each year, millions of tons of clothing end up in landfills, where synthetic fabrics can remain for decades without breaking down. Natural fibers like cotton may eventually decompose, but they can still release chemicals used during dyeing and finishing processes. In landfill environments, limited oxygen and sunlight slow decomposition, causing clothes to remain buried for many years. As garments slowly degrade, they may release methane and other greenhouse gases, contributing to climate change. Some discarded clothing is burned in large incinerators, a process that generates energy but also releases carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Developing countries sometimes receive huge shipments of unwanted cloth. Behind every inexpensive shirt or trendy pair of jeans is a human story of long hours, low wages, and difficult conditions inside crowded garment factories. Millions of garment workers around the world sew clothing for global brands, forming the backbone of the fast fashion production system. Many of these workers live in developing countries where job opportunities are limited and factory employment is one of the few income sources. Competition among fashion brands is intense, pushing manufacturers to produce large quantities at the lowest possible cost. This pressure often leads factory owners to reduce labor expenses, resulting in extremely low wages for garment workers. In some regions, workers earn just enough to survive while struggling to cover food, housing, and healthcare despite long hours. Shifts can stretch far beyond normal hours, especially when companies demand urgent orders for new fashion collections. Workers may spend 10 to 12 hours sewing continuously, repeating the same task hundreds or thousands of times daily. This repetitive work can cause physical strain, including back pain, eye fatigue, and joint problems over time. Many factories are crowded spaces filled with rows of sewing machines operating simultaneously, creating noisy environments. Ventilation in some factories is limited, making the air hot and uncomfortable, especially where temperatures are already high. Despite these challenges, workers often continue because they need steady income to support families and communities. For many workers, wages help pay for children's education, food supplies, and essential household expenses. However, the pressure to produce quickly sometimes leads factories to ignore safety standards that protect workers. Poor building maintenance, overcrowding, and blocked emergency exits have been reported in some manufacturing facilities. When safety rules are ignored, workers face serious risks while performing daily tasks inside these factories. Several tragic industrial accidents revealed the dangerous conditions that can exist within parts of the global garment industry. These events shocked the world and sparked international conversations about worker safety and labor rights. Many organizations and activists began demanding better working conditions and fair wages for garment workers worldwide. Some global brands responded by promising improvements in factory safety inspections and labor monitoring systems. Despite progress in some areas, challenges remain because the fast fashion model prioritizes speed and low costs. When brands expect factories to deliver clothing extremely quickly, manufacturers sometimes push workers harder to meet deadlines. This constant rush creates stressful environments where employees must maintain high production targets all day. Workers may feel pressure to continue sewing even when exhausted for fear of losing income or employment. Women make up a large percentage of the garment workforce in many countries, playing a crucial role in production. For some women, factory jobs provide financial independence previously unavailable in their communities, yet they may face job insecurity, limited benefits, or lack of workplace protections in certain factories. Child labor has historically been a concern in parts of the garment supply chain, though many efforts now focus on eliminating it. Governments, organizations, and responsible companies have worked to improve regulations and monitoring systems to protect young people. Transparency in supply chains has become important as consumers demand to know where and how their clothes are produced. Some brands now publish information about their factories and labor policies in response to growing public awareness. Ethical fashion movements encourage companies to treat workers fairly while maintaining safe workplaces and reasonable hours. Certifications and labor rights organizations attempt to verify whether factories follow responsible employment practices. However, monitoring thousands of factories across different countries remains a complex challenge for regulators and companies. The demand for extremely cheap clothing continues pushing manufacturers to minimize production costs wherever possible. This economic pressure makes it difficult to maintain both low prices and fair working conditions at the same time. When consumers purchase extremely low-priced clothing, they may unknowingly contribute to the pressures placed on workers. Now that the hidden environmental damage and human struggles behind fast fashion are becoming clearer, an important question emerges about how ordinary people can respond responsibly. The good news is that individual choices, although small at first, can gradually influence the direction of the fashion industry. Every purchase sends a message to companies about what consumers value, whether it is low prices, sustainability, ethical production, or long-lasting quality. One powerful step people can take is simply buying fewer clothes and choosing garments they truly need instead of constantly chasing every new trend. When consumers slow down their shopping habits, they naturally reduce demand for mass-produced clothing flooding stores every few weeks. Choosing quality over quantity can also make a significant difference, because well-made garments often last far longer than cheaply manufactured fast fashion pieces. Durable clothing may cost more initially, but its longer lifespan can reduce waste and prevent frequent replacements. Another helpful approach is learning how to properly care for clothes so they remain wearable and attractive for many years. Simple habits like washing garments less frequently, using gentle detergents, and air-drying fabrics can extend clothing life significantly. Repairing damaged clothing is another powerful way to challenge the disposable mindset encouraged by fast fashion companies. Small repairs like sewing loose buttons or fixing minor tears can keep garments usable instead of sending them prematurely to landfills. In the past, repairing clothes was common practice, and many people are now rediscovering these skills as sustainable habits. Thrift stores and secondhand markets also provide alternatives to constantly buying brand new clothing produced by fast fashion companies. Purchasing secondhand garments extends the life cycle of clothing while reducing the demand for new resource-intensive production. Vintage fashion has even become popular among younger generations looking for unique styles while supporting sustainable choices. Clothing swaps are another creative solution where friends or communities exchange garments they no longer wear but still remain in good condition. These events allow people to refresh their wardrobes without contributing to new manufacturing or environmental waste. Supporting brands that prioritize ethical production practices is another meaningful step toward improving the fashion industry. Some companies focus on fair wages, safe workplaces, and environmentally responsible materials when producing their clothing collections. Although these garments may sometimes cost more, they represent a shift toward more responsible and transparent fashion systems. Reading clothing labels and researching brand policies can help consumers understand how garments are produced before making purchases. Many organizations now publish reports evaluating companies based on labor conditions, environmental impact, and supply chain transparency. Social media has also become a powerful tool for raising awareness and encouraging brands to adopt more responsible practices. Consumers increasingly share information online about sustainability, ethical production, and the environmental effects of fashion choices. As more people become aware of these issues, companies may feel greater pressure to improve their manufacturing processes. Some fashion brands have already begun experimenting with recycled fabrics and eco-friendly production methods to reduce environmental damage. Others invest in research to develop innovative materials that require less water energy and chemical processing. Circular fashion is another emerging concept focused on keeping clothing in use for as long as possible through recycling and reuse. In circular systems, old garments can be transformed into new fabrics instead of being discarded in landfills. Technology is also playing a role in improving sustainability through advanced recycling techniques and more efficient textile manufacturing processes. While these innovations are promising, widespread change will require cooperation between consumers, companies, and governments. Governments can introduce regulations encouraging responsible production waste reduction and safer working conditions in textile industries. Environmental policies can also limit pollution from textile factories and encourage better treatment of wastewater and chemical dyes. Educational campaigns help inform people about the environmental and social effects of fast fashion consumption habits. When consumers understand the full story behind clothing production, they are more likely to make thoughtful purchasing decisions. Schools and universities are also beginning to include sustainability discussions within fashion and design programs. Future designers may develop clothing with durability, recyclability, and ethical production already integral.